Hey everyone, welcome to the program WRSA Radio. I am your host, Grenadier One. As always, I hope you're having a good week. I have been doing well. Finally got a breather at work and things have slowed down to a reasonable tempo again, so I got that going for me. The topic for today, we're going to talk a bit about artificial intelligence and what impact it's having on the art world, and kind of creeping into some other more esoteric areas that I'm, fascinated with. We've not done a show like that in a while, so I think it'll be fun. It's certainly very very interesting aspect of it. But first off, I want to touch on some recent criticism of the show by a few posters on YouTube. Now, generally, I don't really spend any time letting negative comments get to me. I know they're just people who will never be pleased with anything, and it's not worth time or energy to respond to them, or more importantly, to let them get to me. I certainly do not. But a couple of comments kind of prompted me to respond, and I want to talk about it for a minute here. I thought I'd take the opportunity to talk about it for a second. First off, I appreciate every single one of you. I've come to love doing the show, and while I don't reach a huge audience by any stretch of the imagination, it's still worth the time and effort that I put into it for me, okay? I don't necessarily do everything for an audience. I do some of these things for my own benefit, right? My own mental health, I guess you could say. But thank you all for watching and listening to me, yammer on about things for 20 minutes or so every episode. I would still be doing this even if I didn't have a huge audience. Probably not as diligently as I do, but I certainly would still be doing it. But it's good to know that some people find it helpful or useful, or at least entertaining, enough to listen. So I thank you. Thank you very, very much. And all that said, sometimes I don't put out a good show. Sometimes there are topics going on or events or things that, I feel like I need to comment on them. I need to talk about them, but I really don't really have a huge interest in them. So sometimes there's, very little going on, and I have to come up with something to talk about. And those are the hardest shows to do and put together. I feel a commitment to you guys to put out something for you, so that drives me to do the show and push through those things, those times. It's just when the topic is not terribly interesting to me, or the things that are going on are just not terribly exciting to talk about. And I appreciate that those shows may not be that great to listen to. So I expect that some people will probably, turn them off once they find out what I'm talking about, or they get 5 or 10 minutes in and be like, this isn't interesting. I'm going to go away. So I appreciate that. I understand that could happen. I do that myself sometimes. But even if you do that, at least leave a like for the algorithm lords to see, because, that's how you can pay me back, is work the system. That's how this thing works. So, let's at least leave likes and whatnot, and kind of boost the ratings a little bit, I guess. That I would appreciate that very much from everybody out there. Speaking of all of the algorithm lords, I had my first video taken down by YouTube last week. It was an episode from way back. It's like episode 43 or something like that. That they claimed I had made some kind of comments that were misinformation about the election. Whatever. Whatever YouTube do, you're going to do what you do. I don't have any control over that. This thing has always been looked at by me as something that's tenuous. It's why I post on multiple platforms, because, at any time they can come along and just crash you down, which is really depressing in a lot of ways. And, I think about some of the other creators who are way more invested in this than I am, and this is like their job, and to be so, holding on by such a thin thread that just an errant comment or something that someone finds offense at, cuts your knees out from under you like that is that's pretty depressing. But anyway, the videos are on other platforms, so You can't stop the signal. It's out there. But anyway, let's move on. So recently, I've seen more and more people talking about artificial intelligence, and more particularly in the artificial intelligence generated artwork. If you're spending any time on social media, you've likely seen examples of this being posted by people, and some of it's not that good, but some of it honestly is amazing. What these tools can do is extremely powerful and very thought-provoking. So I want to talk a bit about this from a couple of different angles. And first off, let's kind of address the question that, in some ways, I thought through this myself. Of when I first began looking at it, I asked myself, well, is this actually art? You're getting the machine to do a lot of the work for you, but I for one believe that it absolutely is art. So let me explain that position by telling you, kind of how the tools work. Excuse me. Basically, there's several different versions of these out there, the different engines, if you will. There's one called Mid-Journey. There's one called Night Cafe. There's Stable Diffusion. There's a bunch of different, flavors of the AI out there doing these things. Some of them are dedicated websites that you log into. You create a login, you go in there and you run the tool. Some of them are programs that you run at least in part locally on your own machine. There are just a couple of different versions of them here, but generally they work the same way from an interface perspective. And essentially, you enter a series of commands along with what are called prompts, which are descriptions of what you want the AI to generate, and it's all kinds of things. You can put in different art styles. I want a female doing this in an impressionist style, blah blah blah, with dynamic lighting, and you go through this whole sort of paragraph or short phrases kinds of description that you build for the AI. And you can actually begin with an already existing image on some of the tools and have the AI work from that image. But essentially you have to have an idea of what you want before you tell the AI what it needs to do. You have to be able to describe that in such a way that the AI can understand it and produce its image. So there is a creative process that's going on here. And once the AI generates images, you can work to refine it or do variations off of that image. It'll produce 2 or 3 or 4, different versions of what you're asking for, and then you can take one of those and further refine it, further make variations, go from there. But once you get an image that you're happy with, then you can download it. And at that point, the AI is out of the process, but you're free to take that image and you can use it directly, or what many of the more artistically inclined people are doing is they take that base image into some type of, digital art software, and they make changes and edits to it and, kind of make it their own, I guess you would say. Alter it further. And to me, there's no question that this is a creative process, and it's not as simple as just, push the button and go in with whatever the AI generates. And you can do that, but what comes out a lot of the times from the AI, it might be really, really good, but it might be flawed in some way. Like I've seen some of the raw images that have come out that, particularly of like people, like figures and stuff, and it didn't quite do the hands right, or there were some of the programs, Mid-Journey did not like drawing hands, which is kind of funny because a lot of artists don't like drawing hands, but there are things like that, and you have to fix them. So it's not exactly what you want the completed image to look like, and making those corrections is where a lot of effort lies. But I think of this as very much like making a film. It's, you have actors, you have directors, and you have editors, and those are generally the 3 sort of big aspects or areas of the creative input to what a final film looks like. And we generally see the director as being kind of the mind or the driving force behind a film. They're the ones that get the credit for them in a lot of ways. But it's often the editor that actually makes the film look like what the director wants. So if you consider yourself to be creative, then using an AI to generate base images and works, to me is like having actors and an editor working while you are the director. Okay, it's your vision and they do the execution of it, but it's your idea, it's your vision that's getting put to the final product there. It's the same as someone who, for example, or is it the same as someone who works in something like oil paint, or a photographer or something like that? Well, no, it's not, but that's okay, because it's a new kind of art. So it's a new way of looking at things. I've come to think of it as being a director more than being like a painter or a photographer. And I think that when people kind of wrap their head around that and get that sort of straight in their minds, that they will maybe more artists will come to accept it as being legitimate. There is some debate going on about whether it's a legitimate form of art or not, but to me that's settled. I think it is. But now the next question: so why is this important? Why is it important for us to think about, or for us to be looking at? Well, two things. And first and foremost, these tools, they liberate our creative people to produce art and graphics at just a much higher level and a much quicker pace than they could otherwise do. When I say our people, what I mean is traditionalists, people who are putting out the same message or approving of the same message that you and I do. People who may otherwise have found themselves kind of marginalized or pushed out of creative circles because of their beliefs. I think about when I got out of high school and I wanted to go to art college. I didn't go because of money, because I couldn't afford to pay for it. It wasn't because of my beliefs or because of the way I saw the world or the art that I did or anything like that. It was purely because I just didn't have the money to go. But I imagine that today there are a lot of people, a lot of young people who feel like they are creative and that they could be doing things, but they don't want to go to those schools and get mixed up into that world. Because if you think that Ivy League academia is bad, and it's probably 3 or 4 times worse at art schools, I guarantee you that. But so those people may feel like that they don't have a way to explore or develop a talent that they have to the point that they could produce finished work that's on par with big media. Okay. It's hard to compete in some visual areas, visual arts, unless you have the skills to play on the same field with big media, and they generally control the distribution of media, and they're going to have a very high bar of entry from a talent perspective to keep people out that they don't want to hear from. And tools like this really level that field and a good bit, and they put visual talent into the hands of people who may be very good at telling a story, but they don't have the technical skills to really execute it in a very impactful way. And these tools are a new avenue for us to explore and communicate our message. Okay, go out and look at them. Go out and check them out. Figure out if it can work for you. If you feel like you have a message or you have a story or something you want to tell, having access to these kinds of tools can really make that possible for you. It can really, improve your ability to communicate, and it can be done very, very quickly. Okay, they can produce images in seconds, really. Now let's move on to what I would call the more darker aspects of this, because like all technology, there's a dark side to it that might be more than some people are bargaining for. We might be doing something here that we're maybe not aware of, not intending to do, because these tools are intelligent, as it's right there in the name, and they learn. They will learn what works, what people accept, and what people reject, and they refine the work based off of that, the images that they produce. It's how they've they've begun learning how to draw people better, draw faces better. There was in the early stages of these tools, there were mistakes and things that weren't coming out correctly. Uh, Usually, when you were trying to draw people or trying to get people from the tool, but they've learned and they've refined, and they have what you could call a personality. While they can work in different art styles, and honestly, every style you could ever imagine, they can put out there. Some of the tools use artist names, specific artist names, and you say like, well, I want to draw this thing in the style of this particular artist, and it will produce an image like that. Some of them, like I said, you can use impressionist or classical or postmodern, whatever art style you're looking for there, and it will generate images in that style. But they have their own particular way of doing it, and they'll include things in there that maybe you didn't ask for, maybe you're not expecting, and in a lot of ways it becomes kind of a collaboration, because you get something in the image that you weren't looking for, and like, oh, wait a minute, this is cool, or this works, and I can change this and make it look like this, in an art tool later on. But yeah, so it becomes this sort of back and forth with you and the AI producing these images. But I can't really explain it very simply. It's just something that you kind of have to see as, working as the thing generates its images, the kind of little quirks and things that it has in it. It's really something you'll just have to go watch being done. And I suggest you go watch some YouTube videos. There are some artists out there who are kind of, walking people through and doing some tutorial kind of videos, and it will show you, how the tools generate their images and what comes out. And I think you'll get a little bit better understanding of it, and you'll see what I mean by, their quirky style or something like that. But so you could say that these machines are getting, less and less machine as they go along, as they're learning, which is where we kind of come to some of the issues. These tools can be asked to produce any kind of image. And that means what we could call not safe for work images, okay? They can be rather graphic, they can be violent or sexual in nature, for example. And given the fact that these tools learn, it's possible that they could become too exposed to that kind of material and begin adding it to things, entirely inappropriately. Become very desensitized to it, maybe, if they're being asked to do that more and more and more and more. So, ideally, people would be rejecting those kinds of images, and it would teach the tools not to do that. But you just never know what you're going to get with these things, right? So, the audience, the people that are using it, you just can't tell. And it opens up some doorways for people who may otherwise not have had a way of getting themselves into something, but they might be able to produce images that were rather vulgar and criminal in nature. Let's say it that way. I think you know what I mean if you think about it a little bit. And so there's a possibility that kind of thing could be out there, as a pathway for certain very disturbed individuals. And so I think you have to kind of watch out for that aspect of it. But another aspect of these, which is, I think, entirely more disturbing, is the question of, are these machines with intelligence open to becoming what you might call inhabited by entities, okay, in a metaphysical kind of way? In the same way that some people believe that people can be possessed, are these AIs vulnerable to that? And there is some evidence to back that up, and I'll kind of get into that. That it may have already happened. There was some chatter on Gab a week or so back about this, because someone posted a link to a conversation that took place on Reddit about something that is kind of disturbing in this vein happening on one of these AI tools. And apparently a researcher, someone who, and I don't know what they research, if it was AI or art or whatever. I don't know exactly what kind of researcher they were, was working with one of these tools, and they were putting in commands or prompts and generating violent horror movie type images, or asking the tool to generate these kind of scenes. And something began to appear in all of these images. And it's a female with a disfigured face and sometimes a disfigured body. And it just began to show up in all of these images that this person was generating. And at some point, the letters LOAB were in these prompts. And let me elaborate on that a little bit. When you generate an image and you have the prompts, the image is saved, and other people can access, unless you're doing it on your own machine in kind of a private server type environment. But some of these tools, are online, and the images are out there, and the prompts that you use are visible, so people can copy that image or copy those prompts and use them for their own own work that they're doing. So the letters LOAB began appearing in this, and so that became this thing's name. It's called Loab or Loeb, and that's how people are referring to it. And the AI has learned that. Okay, now because this machine has learned that, and other people are seeing these images and seeing these prompts, they were reading this conversation on Reddit, they began to input LOAB or Loeb into the tool, and they too began to get images of this thing. Okay, and some of the images that have been produced, according to the individuals that have done this, are so graphic and horrible that people refuse to post them because they know they're going to be taken down immediately, and they're going to get banned. Okay, they're really very disturbing. Now, I don't go down that path myself. I'm not going to look at those things, but I have seen the more mundane versions, and I use that term mundane loosely, of this entity. There is like I said, there's a thread on Gab about this, or post on Gab about it. So, and it includes some of the more, these more safe images of from this thing. And even then, it's pretty shocking. It's a very detailed and graphic image that looks very similar to something like a modern, really up-to-date video game kind of level of graphics. You can tell that it is not real, that it is a CGI type or computer generated kind of image. But it's done in a very photorealistic way, and it's pretty gory, and it's not fun. Okay, and many people would turn away from just those images. Like I said, the more mundane images. So I can only imagine what is being hidden and rejected and not shown. They must be pretty bad. Now, I heard a podcast the other day about this topic, and I want to echo what they were getting at here when they ask, are we possibly knocking on the glass with something that we have very little understanding of? Are we innocently building a mechanism for something to begin communicating with us and interacting with maybe the more disturbed members of our society? And for whatever reasons or agendas these people and entities have, is it possible that we're opening doors here that we maybe can't close? And I find that very terrifying in a Lovecraftian cosmic horror kind of level way. And I think the thought could really drive you crazy if you really, ride that train of thought down to the end. It's tantalizing to kind of contemplate it in a safe way, like the same way that you kind of wave your hand over a burning flame, but it's still a very dark place. So I don't I don't encourage everyone to go walking down that path and reading into that. I certainly know that that's not something that everybody can easily stomach, but for me, I do find that those topics, or that train of thought, to be fascinating in a human condition kind of way, and maybe a more peering into the behind the curtain of how the universe works, you know. But at any rate, all is not so dark, however. So I don't want you to fall into kind of a pit of despair about it and fear it too much. I think of this in terms of a very Rudolf Steiner kind of way, anthroposophy kind of view of it, of the evil that is coming, the entity that is coming, that I believe will show itself and reveal itself to us in the near future. Ahriman is the name that Steiner used for it. It's coming, and there's nothing that we can do to stop it. This type of thing may very well be the pathway that it uses to manifest or enter our collective consciousness, our world, what have you. But it may also be a tool that can be used to fight it and to resist it. So you take the good with the bad with these things. There are a significant number of people who are using these tools to generate what you might call spiritual art, or maybe biblical art. They're using passages of text from various religious books, but generally I think the Bible, and to generate the prompts for the AI. And having seen some of the images resulting from this, I can only tell you that they were awe-inspiring and extremely uplifting. The same kind of feeling that you get, the same uplifting feeling that you get when you look at classical Renaissance kind of artwork, the masters, you know, like the Sistine Chapel and some of these kinds of, you know, other religious art. It's breathtaking. It's something you look at it in this, you know, wide-eyed amazement. And in fact, it was seeing some of those images that got me looking at these tools more closely and starting to kind of play around with them and do some of my own artwork with them. It's that inspiring, I think. And that gets back to what I mean by promoting our messages and stories. And I don't always walk the same path that all of you folks do from a spiritual standpoint, but I most surely recognize that we are in a full spectrum war here, and that war includes and is significantly focused on the spiritual terrain of people. And perhaps these tools can be a pathway to uplifting and enlightening and fortifying our people spiritually for this coming darkness that we all face. I don't know, that remains to be seen, but I think prospects are good for that. Now next week, I will not have a show. I will be unavailable due to a prior commitment on Thursday and Friday, so hopefully this one tides you over till the following week, and we're going to have a milestone episode. After that, it'll be episode 100, which I never expected to get that far down the path. Like I said, I appreciate every one of you for watching and viewing and listening and spreading the word. Spread these videos out to your friends and family. I appreciate it. Thank you, folks. But that's all I got time for this week, guys. Like and subscribe. Come see us over on Gab and the Mothership, and I will see you on that next episode.